They exist? 7 mythical creatures. Science can't explain. 7 creatures. 7 encounters that never settled into certainty. Not because nobody searched for answers, but because every time someone got close enough to understand what they were seeing, the moment fractured. A shadow didn't match the body that cast it. A sound came before anything appeared. Footprints ended where nothing should have landed. Tonight we're counting down 7 creatures science still can't explain, and the last one was never seen at all. This is CreatureXX. Let's begin. Number 7, Peryton. The first thing witnesses noticed wasn't the creature. It was the shadow, a human-shaped silhouette sliding across rock faces at dawn, stretching and shrinking as if someone were running just out of sight. Moments later, the body appeared. A stag stood on the ridge above antlers wide, chest forward, perfectly still. Then it unfolded its wings, feathered, immense, up to 16 feet across, wider than a king-size bed, yet the takeoff made no sound. No heavy wing beats, no rush of air. Just lift! What unsettled observers wasn't speed alone, it was how the creature adjusted midair. It didn't flap to correct its course, it leaned, as if the air itself responded to its weight. One sentry described watching it cross a valley in seconds, faster than a running horse below, yet leaving the air perfectly still. No displaced dust, no startled birds, no sound at all. And that's where something felt wrong. As the creature flew, its shadow didn't change. The body above was clearly avian wings, talons, posture, but the shadow below remained human. This mismatch is often described as shadow dissonance, a projection that refuses to align with the form that casts it. One account describes a lone shepherd watching a human-shaped shadow race across a canyon wall, moments before something struck from above, knocking him to the ground without warning. Medieval texts describe the Peryton as a creature bound to guilt or stolen identity, sometimes said to originate from lost civilizations. Scientifically, the anatomy collapses under scrutiny, but visually, symbolically, it behaves less like a predator and more like a curse, a creature that flies freely while dragging something human behind it. Number 6, Snallygaster. The farmer heard it before he saw anything. Just after midnight, standing near his barn, a metallic screech tore through the air like steel grinding against steel. The animals went silent, then the sound came again, closer this time. The farmer later said the silence afterward was worse than the scream. Insects stopped, wind dropped, even the cattle refused to move. When the sound finally returned, it didn't fade into the distance it cut off, as if something had landed nearby and simply folded itself into the dark. Something passed overhead, blocking the moonlight in a single sweep. Witnesses described wings nearly 15 feet wide, the length of a pickup truck, casting a shadow that swallowed rooftops. The beak was described as hard, almost metallic, lined with jagged teeth. Tentacle-like appendages twisting independently of the wings, never fully still. Farm animals were later found drained of blood, no torn flesh, no signs of struggle. By the early 1900s, Maryland newspapers turned the Snallygaster into a regional obsession. Sightings flooded headlines. Entire towns stayed indoors after dark. Some articles even claimed the Smithsonian Institution had taken an interest, though no official records survived. The most unsettling detail wasn't the panic, it was the consistency. Across decades, across communities, the same elements repeated. Wings, tentacles, a metallic scream before the attack. Folklore exaggerates over time, but fear that spreads this evenly usually begins with something people believed they heard and then saw. Number 5, Each-Uisge. The traveler was exhausted, cold, wet, hours from shelter. That's when he saw the horse standing near the loch, large, built like a draft horse, heavy enough to weigh as much as a small car. Its coat reflected the fading light like polished stone. It didn't spook, didn't move, just waited. The temptation was simple: warmth, speed, rest. He mounted the horse and crossed the point of no return. Witnesses describe a brief second of confusion before panic. Not when the horse ran, but when it didn't react to their struggle. No bucking, no resistance, just forward motion, steady and deliberate, straight toward the water. The moment his hands touched the hide, the texture changed. Instant. Skin glued to skin. The creature bolted toward the water and dove straight down. No thrashing, no hesitation. Legends say only one thing ever returned to shore. Not clothing, not bones. just the liver appearing days later, floating alone near the edge of the loch. No explanation is given for why. In human form, the creature was said to walk among villages unnoticed, except for water weeds tangled in its hair, and hooves where feet should be. This wasn't a story about monsters, it was a warning about relief that arrives too easily. Number 4. Slenderman. Eyewitness accounts rarely describe him directly. They describe what happens afterward. Headaches that don't respond to medication, memory gaps, minutes missing between locations, cameras malfunctioning when pointed toward tree lines. One driver recalled passing a stretch of forest and feeling an overwhelming pressure to look back, then realizing he couldn't remember the next 5 miles. When people do describe the figure, the details remain distant. Tall, over 8 feet, thin, motionless, standing where a person shouldn't fit, always partially obscured. The face is never described because there's nothing to describe, not blank, absent. What makes Slenderman different from older folklore is how he behaves. He doesn't chase, he doesn't attack, he intrudes, disrupts perception, distorts memory. Modern sightings rarely involve direct interaction, only lingering after effects. Several eyewitnesses describe the same instinctive reaction, the urge not to look directly at the figure. Not fear exactly, more like discomfort, as if focusing too long would cause something irreversible, a thought many couldn't later explain, only remember avoiding. Static in video recordings, migraines, the sensation of being watched long after leaving the area. This isn't a creature of claws or teeth, it's a creature of interference. A modern evolution of myth shaped by technology, shared fear, and unreliable perception. Not explained, only experienced. Number 3. Dover Demon. It was quiet. That's what all 3 witnesses emphasized. April 1977. Dover, Massachusetts, late night roads, headlights cutting through trees. The creature stood about 4 feet tall, child-sized, perched on a stone wall beside the road. Its head was far too large for its body, rounded, smooth, balanced like it shouldn't be. Its skin appeared pale orange under headlights, hairless and reflective. Its limbs were long and thin, gripping stone like hands. The witnesses did not know each other. They were driving separate roads, hours apart. Each described the same stillness, no aggression, no movement, just watching. One witness later said the most frightening part wasn't the creature itself, it was how comfortable it seemed being seen. No flinch, no retreat, as if the headlights weren't exposure, but confirmation. Then it vanished into the woods. No footprints were found and no physical traces, only sketches drawn independently that matched in proportion. The fear here wasn't panic, it was unease, the kind that comes from realizing something noticed you and chose not to act. Number 2. Einfield Horror. It began with screaming, then gunfire. April 1973, Enfield, Illinois. Henry McDaniel opened his door after hearing scratching. Something stood in the porch light, about 4.5 feet tall, waist high to an adult. Gray skin, 2 small arms, 3 legs, eyes glowing pink like reflectors. He fired. The sound of the gunshot shattered the street. Neighbors later described doors opening at once, people shouting, lights flicking on, someone screaming for others to come outside. In the confusion, no one agreed on what they were seeing, only that something had triggered pure panic in seconds. The creature hissed sharp, an animal then leapt, 3 jumps. Witnesses later tried to pace the distance in daylight, from porch to field, from fence to embankment, nearly 75 feet farther than most people could throw a stone covered without slowing, without slipping, without breaking stride, covering nearly 75 feet longer than a bowling lane from a standing start. People ran outside, shouting, panic. Tracks were found the next morning, dog-like impressions, but with 6 toe pads. Search parties arrived, armed, uncertain. No capture followed, no explanation fit cleanly, and the physical traces refused to disappear quietly. This wasn't a single story, it was an eruption. Number 1. Hidebehind. At first, it's subtle. You slow down. The forest doesn't. Your footsteps stop echoing the way they should. Then comes the realization. Every time you pause, the space behind you feels occupied. Loggers described it the same way. Not a shape, not a sound, just presence, something matching your pace. The realization doesn't arrive all at once. It builds quietly when your footsteps change rhythm. and the silence behind you adjusts with them. Not delayed, not early, perfectly timed, always behind. When you stop walking, it stops too. When you turn, there's nothing but the tree you passed seconds ago now feels closer than it should. The fear isn't visual, it's anticipatory. The moment you realize you're being followed, and you can't prove it, that's when people say the fear becomes physical. Shoulders tighten, breathing shortens. Not because something appears, but because nothing does. And turning around suddenly feels like the most dangerous choice you could make. This is why the Hidebehind endures. Because it doesn't rely on being seen. It lives in the instant you understand you're no longer alone. And that fear isn't about a creature, it's about vulnerability. Some of these creatures were born from folklore, others from eyewitness encounters. Some emerged only recently, but all of them reveal the same truth. Fear doesn't need clarity to survive. Sometimes it only needs a shadow that doesn't match, a sound before an attack, footprints that stop too suddenly, and the feeling deep and unmistakable that something is closer than it should be. This is CreatureXX. Subscribe, because some mysteries fade, and others stay with you long after the screen goes dark.